There is some deep work happening here, because the sun in Libra opposing Chiron in Aries is really forcing us to face our deepest fears and insecurities when it comes to relationships. We are being stripped down and forced to look at the greatest fears that we have in our relationships. And where do they stem from? Where do they come from? They might not even come from just your experiences. They come from your parents' experiences and your grandparents' experiences and your great-grandparents and your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents' experiences that pass them down through the generations. That's what Jupiter in Cancer brings, is like really reflecting on the past, not just your past, but your familial past. And Chiron in Aries, retrograde, is drawing you towards your past and saying, look at these fears. Where do they come from? Welcome to the Weekly Transit, your guide to understanding the current planetary and astral alignments. Together, we'll explore how to harness these cosmic frequencies, empowering you to reach your highest potential as you navigate the days ahead. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian. Welcome to the Weekly Transit. This is the week of October 13th to the 19th, where we are covering, get comfortable, 10 transits highlighted by Venus's transit into Libra and Pluto stationing direct in Aquarius. I just want to thank you for being here. I'm so grateful to be here with you. I just want to take a moment to express my gratitude. I'm so thankful to be sitting here, sharing with you the knowledge of the planets and stars. I hope this message is empowering and supportive for you in guiding you through the week ahead. You are a gift, you are a miracle, and yes, I don't know what else to say. I'm just feeling so much love and gratitude for the fact that I get to be here and share this knowledge with you and that you're listening to me. So thank you. Let's begin with the first transit. Venus in Libra. So we begin with the two highlights, actually. Monday could be very intense because we've got 4 transits occurring on Monday and actually 2 more occurring on Tuesday, which play into the 4 transits on Monday. So let's begin with the first transit, which is Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, the planet of relationships, transiting into the cardinal air sign symbolized by the scales and ruled by Venus. So Venus is returning to the sign that it rules. It is in a position of power from October 13th to November 6th. What does this mean? Venus in Libra brings about a time to really take a look at your relationships, your lovers, your friends, your business partners, the people that you share your experiences with. Do they feel balanced? Or do they feel out of balance? Venus in Libra brings about an opportunity to rebalance the scales of your relationships. Libra is a cardinal sign. Cardinal signs are the signs that initiate the energy. So Venus transiting into the cardinal sign of Libra, which it rules, is inviting you to initiate the conversations. And we say conversations because Venus or Libra is an air sign, and sound, voices, travel through the air. So the opportunity, the invitation, is to initiate conversation in order to create balance, harmony, and peace in your relationships. Libra rules the kidneys. It's interesting because there's two kidneys, there's two sides of the scale, and the kidneys are that organ in the body that cleanse the blood. So interesting, right? Because the whole point of Venus transiting through Libra is to rebalance the scales of your relationships so there's no bad blood. It's cleansing the blood between you and those that you're connecting with. Because the sound of my voice, it creates a ripple across your blood. Every message you send me creates a ripple across my blood. We're made up of mostly water. And so the sound, is it harmonious? Is it peaceful? How do you feel energetically when your lover, your friend, your business partner speaks to you? Do you feel peaceful? Does the sound of their voice or the words that they choose, does it make your blood curdle? We want peace. Because with peace comes love. Or from love comes peace. So where is the love in your relationships? Do you feel loved? Are you loving? In every action that you take in your relationship, every word that you speak, does it come from love or does it come from fear? Nobody is absolved of only love. Even I speak words of fear. Even I act out of fear. It's part of being human. But Venus transiting into Libra creates that invitation. It invites us to really focus on the love and the conversations that we're having in our relationships, and to discern whether or not these conversations are predicated upon the foundation of love. Now, for those born with key astrological points or planets in Cancer or Capricorn, there may be challenges. There may be challenges. For those of you who are parents, if you have a child who was born, or a grandchild who was born between 2008 and 2023, then during this period, they're going to go through a potentially difficult transformation of their relationships or their relationship energy. Because those who were born between 2008 and 2023 were born with Pluto, the god of death, in Capricorn. If you were born with Mars or Mars in Cancer or Capricorn, then there's going to be conflict when Venus squares your Mars, potentially. Something to be mindful of. So if you're looking at your chart and you're like, okay, where are the planets in Capricorn? Where are the planets in Cancer? You know, if you think about those who were born in the late 80s, early 90s, let's go back in time here. You know, we go back to, from like 1989 until, 1989 to 91, there was Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn in Capricorn. And Chiron transiting through Cancer. That was from 88 until 90. So if you were born in that time frame, then most likely during this time frame, October 13th to November 6th, Venus is going to be squaring your Chiron, your Uranus, your Neptune, your Saturn potentially. Could be a bumpy road, a few days, or more than a few days as Venus transits through Libra. You're learning to take responsibility for the give and take that you are asking for within your relationships. You're being called to reimagine the dream of what it means to be in relationship and to take responsibility for your position as the authority and knowing what you want and what you're willing to give. There may be a revolution, something unexpected occurring in your relationship that also creates a resonance or a remembrance of the root of your wound, your suffering, where it comes from, so that you can heal and make peace. So I share this with you not to create fear in you, but to create awareness. Just as if you were to know that there was a storm coming, you would want to know so that you could prepare accordingly. And of course, if you are curious to get deeper into what this transit of Venus in Libra, what it means for you in terms of love and relationship and when it's hitting those planets in your chart, if you're curious to learn more about that, to support yourself, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. You can schedule a live reading or you can order a recorded reading. I'm here to support you and here to help you along and empower you along this journey. The journey of love, Venus in Libra. Now, the last time that Venus transited through Libra was August 29th to September 22nd, 2024. The time before that was November 8th to December 4th, 2023. The time before that was September 29th to October 23rd, 2022. And the time before that was August 15th to September 10th, 2021. Think back to those dates for clues on what could be in store for you this time as Venus transits through Libra. What was going on in your relationships during those dates? Anything happen of note, of interest? Think back. Check your phone. What are the photos that you were taking during those dates? What were you posting on your social media, your Instagram, your Facebook, your TikTok, X, all the different social media platforms that you might be on? Or just look back at your text messages or emails if you're holding on to them for that long. Maybe they'll tell you a story that will give you some insight on what could be in store for you this time as Venus transits through the sign that it rules, Libra. Now for the second transit, this same day, Pluto stations direct in Aquarius at 1 degree and 22 minutes. Pluto is the god of death, lord of the underworld, the planet of transformation. Transiting through the fixed air sign symbolized by the water bearer, Aquarius, transforming the community. Pluto is exactly where it was on October 13th, 2025. It's exactly where it was on January 10th of this year, 2025. Pluto began its retrograde on May 4th. At 3 degrees and 49 minutes. It will be back to 3 degrees and 49 minutes on February 4th. So think about that. For like 13 months, Pluto has gone from 1 degree and 22 minutes to 3 degrees and 49 minutes. Barely over 2 degrees. It's barely moved over 2 degrees in the last 10 months. and it's going to remain within that same area of the sky for the next, 7 months. October, November, December, January, February, 5 months. Sorry, I got that wrong. 5 months. So 5 more months of Pluto in the same space that it's been for the last 10 months. Does that make sense? I said 13 months. But January to February, well, you get what I mean. You get what I mean. Whether it's 15 months or 13 months, it's a long time. It's over a year that Pluto is sitting in the same portion of the sky. So what is in your astrological code between 1 and 3 degrees in air signs, which are Libra, Aquarius, and Gemini, fire signs, which are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, and fixed signs, 2 of which we've already mentioned, Leo and Aquarius, but also Taurus and Scorpio. What is it, those early degrees in those 8 signs? Whatever is at those early degrees in your astrological code is where you have been experiencing transformation. Just as it takes a while for a rock to turn into a diamond, or a grape to turn into a bottle of wine, or a caterpillar to turn into a butterfly, it takes time for us to transform as well. And ultimately, what Pluto and Aquarius is doing is it's helping us transform the collective, the community, society. But in order for us to transform the collective, the community, society, we have to transform ourselves. We have to be willing to be individuals, the unique individual that each and every one of us is. In what ways are you expressing or hiding from your individuality? Because Pluto is Lord of the underworld, and Aquarius is the sign that pulls us out of the closet. So Pluto is going deep within us to pull out our secrets. We can't hide anymore. You are so special. Exactly the way that you are. You are so special. The universe wants you to show up as you are. Not trying to conform or be like everyone else, but to be you. We don't need you to be anyone other than you. It's actually essential and important for you to be you. Salt can't be pepper. Garlic can't be ginger. Every ingredient is unique, and you are a unique ingredient to the construct, the recipe of life on Earth. So Pluto takes its time. And right now it's taking its time in Aquarius. We're here. We're not going back to Pluto and Capricorn. Not in our lifetime. So the focus is, in what ways are you opening up? In what ways are you being willing to be yourself, the individual, unique you? And in what ways are you contributing to any group, club, organization, social network, or social cause that you are a part of that is unique to you, that only you can do? So again, what is in your chart between 1 and 3 degrees, or even 0 and 4 degrees? Stretch it out a little bit. 0 to 4 degrees in Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Leo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Aquarius. What is in your chart? It's 0 to 4 degrees in those 8 signs. Whatever is there is the transformation that you are experiencing. And that transformation is meant to pull you out of hiding, out into the open, to reveal the individual nature of who you are. The third transit of the week, the Sun in Libra squares the Moon in Cancer at 11:12 a.m. on Monday, October 13th. This is the half moon. Now, everybody makes a big deal, and rightfully so, of the new moon and the full moon. But the half moon needs to get a little cred, needs to get a little recognition, because these 4 points, the new moon, the full moon, and the 2 half moons, these are the tension points of the moon. So if you're feeling tension on Monday, it could be because of this half moon. The Sun is the giver of light, life, and vitality. Transiting through Libra. We know about Libra. We talked about that extensively at the top of the episode. The Moon is the planet of emotions, transiting through the cardinal water sign, symbolized by the crab and ruled by the Moon. So the Moon is in a position of power because it's in the sign that it rules. This is bringing our emotional nature, our emotional sensitivity to our home life, while the Sun is bringing vitality to our relationships. So the tension here could have to do with the relationships that you have within your home. Maybe it's with a roommate, a lover, or your children. What you're being shown here through this tension could be what is bringing your attention to what is out of balance. And whatever's out of balance, take time to reflect. Reflect upon your past, your roots, your upbringing, your childhood, the ones who raised and nurtured you, your ancestors, your bloodline. We're reflecting upon the origin of our relationships. If you're feeling tension in your relationship, where does this tension stem from? It doesn't come out of nowhere. It's rooted in your past. Most likely, your relationship with your parents. Your relationship with your parents has created the tension that you're experiencing within your relationships within your very home. Because your relationships with your parents created the pattern or the frequency, the habitual pattern that carries with you throughout life. And as you become awake and aware as an adult, you start to notice that, this is happening again. So part of this half moon is about making peace with your past. Making peace with those relationships that are in balance from your past that maybe you can't balance any longer. Maybe your parents are gone. Maybe they're dead. Maybe you don't have a relationship with this person or that person anymore. But take some time on Monday, Moon Day, to be kind to yourself, to nurture yourself, to care for yourself, because the more you are kind, caring, and nurturing to yourself, the better chance you'll be kind, caring, and nurturing to those that you love. And it's from that position of love that you will create balance, peace, and harmony in your relationships. The fourth transit of the week and the fourth transit for Monday, October 13th involves Venus. As it transits into Libra, forms an opposition to Neptune, retrograde in Aries. It's 0 degree. This transit occurs from Monday to Tuesday, with the exact opposition occurring on Monday. This is the highlighted transit of the week for the Substack essay of the week. So thank you everyone who is subscribing to my Substack, especially those who have subscribed to the paid version. How do I even say that? Those who have subscribed to, paid subscriptions. So I've got people that have paid subscriptions in my Substack, and they're getting exclusive content. So if you want that exclusive content, you can be a paid subscriber to my Substack. The piece that I read here is free. So Venus in Libra opposing Neptune retrograde in Aries. Neptune is the god of fresh water and the sea, the planet of illusion, deception, compassion, and intuition. Aries is the cardinal fire sign, symbolized by the ram, and ruled by Mars, the god of war, the planet of action, aggression, and conflict. Venus opposing Neptune from Libra to Aries might be creating a sense of disillusionment when it comes to your relationships, and specifically who you are in your relationships. If you're feeling confused about who you are, or what you want, or what you're willing to give in your relationships, it could be because of this aspect. Do things feel unclear in your relationships? Are you clear or unclear about what you're meant to give to your partner and what your partner is meant to give to you? And of course, when I say partner, it could be a friend, a lover, or a business partner. Is there confusion there? What is the status of your faith in your relationships? Do you have a strong sense of faith in terms of the one or the ones that you are in relationship with? And if not, the invitation here is to reimagine the dream. Reimagine the dream of who you are and what you want from those that you are in relationship with. It's time to check in with your heart and really discern whether or not your love nature has faith, or whether you have faith in your love. And if you are lacking faith in your love, the invitation is to reimagine what love means. To have faith, to cultivate faith that you are deserving of what you want. Because Venus represents values, and Venus transiting through Libra is creating that foundation for the scales to sit upon so that we can weigh our values as partners. Now, complementing this aspect between Venus and Libra opposite Neptune retrograde in Aries are the fifth transit of the week, and the sixth transit of the week. They're both happening on Tuesday, October 14th. Both involve Venus and Libra. Both are occurring from October 13th to the 15th, Monday to Wednesday, with the exact aspects occurring on Tuesday, October 14th. So Venus in Libra, as it's opposing Neptune retrograde in Aries, is also forming a trine to Uranus retrograde in Gemini and a trine to Pluto in Aquarius. Trines are supportive aspects that occur between two astrological points or planets that are in the same element with different modalities. So this is like a grand air trine that is occurring here with Venus in Libra, Uranus retrograde in Gemini, and Pluto in Aquarius. We've got all three air signs at play converging through the energy of three planets. Now, we talked about Pluto earlier. Uranus is the primordial sky god, the planet of revolution, rebellion, innovation, independence, and the unexpected. Transiting retrograde at 0 degrees through the mutable air sign symbolized by the twins and ruled by Mercury, the messenger of the gods, guide of souls to the underworld, the planet of consciousness, communication, coordination, the ruler of Gemini. So Venus in Libra, forming a trine with Uranus retrograde in Gemini, is awakening our mind. It's helping us see things from a different perspective. So when I say reimagine the dream of what relationships are meant to be, Uranus and that was the Neptune in Aries opposing Venus in Libra, Uranus in Gemini is helping to awaken our mind, to help us see things from a different perspective. Maybe one that we haven't thought of before. Where Venus aligning with Pluto in Aquarius is helping us transform these old, tired, habitual patterns that exist within our relationships. It's helping us do things differently. So really think about the early part of the week as an opportunity to do things differently than you have done in the past with regards to your relationships. Be radically different. And when I say be radically different, you want to be radically different in the frequency of love. Really recognize where in this situation, your sort of knee-jerk reaction is to act out of fear. Take some time to reflect where that fear comes from, where it stems from. Show yourself love because that fear instinct was protecting you as a child. But you are an adult now. And because you're an adult, you have the conscious opportunity to choose love over fear. As a child, you don't know any better. It's instinctual. You have to protect yourself. You're a small person and it's all these bigger people. It's like, what am I supposed to do here? Now you're an adult. You can choose love over fear. You can be conscious of this. It's not easy. Nobody said it's easy. It's always much easier said than done. But being aware of it makes it easier to do it than not being aware of it. So that's why we're here, to point out and to be aware by pointing out where the planets are and what that means so that you can work with that energy to support you through whatever difficulties or challenges you're experiencing in your relationships. So how can you be radically different in your relationships in order to reimagine the dream of love through faith so you can transform the fear to love? I don't have the answer of how you do that because it's different for each individual. I could tell you what works for me in a specific incident, but in your incident, for you, could be totally different. So, but these are the ingredients that you're working with here. The 7th transit of the week involves the Sun in Libra, again, which was previously forming a square to the Moon in Cancer, but is now forming a square to Jupiter in Cancer. This aspect occurs from Tuesday to Saturday, October 14th to the 18th, with the exact square occurring on Thursday, Thursday, October 16th. And the reason why I say Thursday is because Thursday is named for Thor, the Old Norse god, which is associated with the Roman god Jupiter, Jueves, for my Spanish-speaking friends. Jupiter is the god of thunder, lord of justice, the planet of luck and expansion, transiting through Cancer. So it's expanding our connection to the past. As the sun is bringing vitality to the sign of relationships, Libra, Jupiter is expanding our relationship to our past as it moves through the sign that represents the past, Cancer. So this is helping us reflect upon the past or the origin of our relationships so that we can make the changes that we need to make. Because the changes occur, you got to pull it up by the root. You can't change your present unless you make peace with your past. It's like that phrase, it just keeps coming up for me recently, is it's never too late to have a good childhood. I laugh because, again, it sounds really easy, but it's not. Because in order to have a good childhood, you have to go back to those ugly moments, those moments that hurt you, that created pain, and you need to be there for yourself. You need to show yourself love. You need to forgive yourself for however you responded in whatever way that makes you angry at yourself. That perpetuates the pattern that has created the perpetual conflict in your relationships. So the sun in Libra squaring Jupiter in Cancer, this is happening Tuesday to Saturday. This is lingering pretty much all week. So one of the major themes of the week is delving into the depths of your relationships and the origin of those relationships. Why do I keep going through the same thing over and over again in my relationship? When you find that frustration, this is happening again. It's a different person. It's the same story. That's the universe screaming at you to reflect upon your past, to connect the dots from this relationship to the last relationship to every single other relationship where you've had this similar experience all the way back to the beginning. When you were a child, you were an infant. You were just dropped into the earth. Here you are. And all the trauma and pain and suffering that your parents were experiencing, and they passed down to you. You might have had the most loving, caring parents, but they still had pain and suffering within them. And that got passed down to you. The work is going back and protecting yourself, loving yourself through that pain and suffering through those difficult moments. And that leads us to the 8th transit of the week, which also involves the sun, which is opposing Chiron retrograde in Aries. So, this transit also occurs from Tuesday to Saturday, but the exact opposition occurs on Friday, October 7th. Friday, October 7th. So, Chiron's the wound, and the ancient wisdom which is unlocked through healing that wound. Aries, we talked about that earlier in relation to Neptune. So the exact square hasn't occurred yet with Jupiter and Chiron. That happens next week on October 23rd, but we're already starting to feel that now. Obviously, with the sun squaring Jupiter in Cancer at 24 degrees and the sun in Libra opposing Chiron retrograde in Aries at 24 degrees. There is some deep work happening here because the sun in Libra opposing Chiron in Aries is really forcing us to face our deepest fears and insecurities when it comes to relationships. We are being stripped down and forced to look at the greatest fears that we have in our relationships. And where do they stem from? Where do they come from? They might not even come from just your experiences. They come from your parents' experiences and your grandparents' experiences and your great-grandparents and your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents' experiences that pass them down through the generations. That's what Jupiter in Cancer brings, is like really reflecting on the past, not just your past, but your familial past. And Chiron in Aries, retrograde, is drawing you towards your past and saying, look at these fears. Where do they come from? Like, I just think about my own family. It's like my grandpa, he didn't have parents from the time he was 5 years old, because they were taken from him and he never saw them again. During the Armenian genocide. 5, 6 years old, gone. Never saw him again. My dad died when I was 32. My mom is still alive, thank God. I can't imagine what my grandfather went through, but I also understand that trauma was passed down to me. Not that my grandpa, sat me on his lap and said, let me pass down my trauma to you, son. Grandson, Wonder Boy is what he called me. With his thick Armenian accent. He died when I was 32 as well, one day before my dad. My grandpa, none of my grandparents meant to pass their trauma down to me. My dad's father lost his father when he was, I think, 8. I have to ask my aunts about that one. But he was taken away, not from the genocide, but because he had tuberculosis. And so when you have tuberculosis, they sent you off into a camp and you never left. You died there. So both my grandfathers lost their fathers at a very young age. And that trauma, though not conscious, is passed down through the energy. What is that for you? I am certain that trauma has affected the way that I relate to other people. And so I consciously really have to work with that and what it means for me. And how that showed up in my relationship with my grandparents. And how it's showing up in my life right now, today. That is the work that the sun in Libra, squaring Jupiter in Cancer and opposing Chiron retrograde in Aries, is bringing up for all of us. That's just my own personal example. And that's just a facet of a personal example, because I could probably talk for another hour about all the trauma of different people in my family that have been passed down to me. But let's move on to the 9th transit of the week. Mars, the god of war, the planet of action, aggression, and conflict, transiting through the fixed water sign that it rules, Scorpio, forms a trine with the North Node in retrograde in Pisces. The North Node is the karmic pathway of the soul's purpose. Pisces is the mutable water sign, symbolized by the fish, Scorpio, the fixed water sign, symbolized by the scorpion, ruled by Mars and Pluto. This transit is occurring from Tuesday to Sunday, basically in concert with the Sun in Libra, square Jupiter in Cancer, and the Sun in Libra opposing Chiron retrograde in Aries. As well as the final transit of the week, which I might as well bring that into the mix too, because that's Mercury in Scorpio forming a trine with the North Node retrograde in Pisces, which really squeezes us in the end of the week, October 17th to the 19th, Friday to Sunday, with the exact trine occurring on Saturday, October 18th. So these last four transits are all happening together, and they are really pushing us to get deep. So Mars and Mercury in Scorpio forming a trine with the North Node retrograde in Pisces. Whew. Yeah. Next week, we'll talk about the conjunction between Mercury and Mars in Scorpio. They're already forming that conjunction, but it's not exact until October 21st. So we'll get to that next week. But this is, Scorpio is Libra on steroids. It's getting into the nitty-gritty, intimate details of relationships, how you're lifted or drained by those around you through intimate exchanges, whether that be through sharing secrets, sharing your body, or sharing money or financial information. When you share money or financial information, when you share your body, when you share secrets, you are becoming vulnerable with those that you do that with. And so through that exchange, do you feel lifted or do you feel drained? So this plays upon the imbalance of the scales of Libra, what we've talked about earlier in the episode. It's getting deeper. It's getting into the nitty-gritty of how you truly feel energetically. We talked about this, I think, last week, or maybe it was the week before, where we gave the example of like you go out and you're hanging out with somebody and you spend 2 hours and they just talk about themselves the entire time. And by the end, you're like, man, I have to take a nap. Did I get paid for that? Am I a therapist? Every time I hang out with this person, we talk about their life problems and I'm exhausted afterwards. Well, okay, you're drained. The connection to the North Node in Pisces is helping you tap into your unconscious. Like, oh, wait. It's all starting to make sense now. I give more than I should in relationships, and I feel drained from those relationships, but because I give more than I should in relationships, where does that stem from? It stems from the fact that my grandfathers lost their fathers. And so they felt the need to overcompensate to receive that attention from others. That's just one little sliver, one little thread. I could talk about dozens and dozens and dozens of other threads. But that's just to go along with the example I gave a bit earlier in relation to the Sun in Libra squaring Jupiter in Cancer, opposing Chiron retrograde in Aries, facing those fears and insecurities that show up and say, oh, this is why I give more than I should, because I'm afraid that if I don't, then that person's not going to like me. They're not going to want to be my friend anymore. If I don't give more than I should, then they're not going to want to be my friend anymore. Well, if that's the case, then maybe they're not a friend. At the same time, maybe you need to speak up and say, I don't feel like I'm getting what I want from this relationship. And that is so difficult to do. It's challenging. Hey, by the way, I just want to see how you're doing. And also, I feel like I'm not getting what I want out of this relationship. How are you doing today? Yeah. I don't really know how you bring that up. It's very nuanced. But maybe the moment comes up this week. Maybe there's some tension that arises early in the week through that half moon. You're like, oh, this isn't working for me. Can we talk about this? I love you as a friend, but I feel like I'm not getting what I need out of this relationship. Can you help me with that? Are you getting what you need from me out of the relationship? It's initiating the discussion so that we can find balance. And so that hopefully neither of us feel drained, we feel lifted by the exchange, by the relationship. Through it all, you want to have compassion for yourself. That's what Pisces is about. That's what the North Node in Pisces is about. It's about having faith. And through that faith, compassion, in recognizing that every experience you've had in your life, every experience that every member of your family has had in their lives, going back 1,000 years or even more, that are now imprinted upon you. You have empathy for them and compassion for yourself because you are carrying that torch now. And it's not an easy torch to carry through the dark caves of life. But you recognize that everything has happened. The good, the bad, the ugly, the joyful, the painful, has all happened for your highest good, for the evolution of your soul. And that brings us to the Substack essay of the week. Thank you again for subscribing. I appreciate all your support. The scales in the dream. Venus in Libra, opposite Neptune in Aries. When the goddess of justice confronts the god of illusion, the return of a 165-year cycle. Every 165 years, Neptune completes his circuit through the zodiac, returning to Aries, the cardinal fire sign ruled by Mars, the god of war. And when Neptune stations here, he enters a prolonged opposition with Venus as she transits Libra, her own sign, the cardinal air sign of balance, justice, and partnership. This is no casual aspect. It is the goddess confronting her shadow across the sky. On one side, Venus in Libra, diplomat, judge, peacemaker. She weighs every argument, seeks fairness in every transaction, and believes harmony can be achieved through law. On the other, Neptune in Aries, mystic warrior, spiritual crusader, martyr for belief. He dissolves boundaries through conviction, confuses idealism with aggression, and weaponizes faith itself. Between them, a 180-degree standoff over the nature of justice, partnership, and what we're willing to sacrifice or kill for our ideals. This opposition has returned only 3 times in recorded history: 1534 to 1546, 1698 to 1710, and 1861 to 1873. Each time, humanity faced the same archetypal crisis. When belief systems collide with the need for balance, when spiritual idealism meets the reality of relationship, when the dream of what's right crashes into the complexity of what's fair, which prevails? Now, from March 30th, 2025 to October 21st, 2038, the pattern returns a 4th time. Now, from October 13th, 2025 through October 21st, 2028, the pattern returns for the 4th time. To understand what we're facing, we must walk backward through the centuries to when this aspect last ignited wars, dissolved empires, and forced humanity to choose between its highest principles and its basest survival instincts. 1861 to 1873. The dream of union meets the reality of war, when ideals demanded blood. The opposition began as the United States faced its greatest internal crisis. Northern and southern states had grown irreconcilably different, socially, economically, morally, with slavery at the center. Venus in Libra asked, "Can we preserve the union through compromise?" Neptune in Aries replied, "No, some truths cannot be negotiated. Some evils must be destroyed." The Civil War erupted, not as a territorial dispute, but as an ideological crusade. When it ended, the nation was reborn, but haunted by the illusion that expansion and prosperity could continue unchecked. The panic of 1873 shattered that mirage, triggering the first global depression of the industrial age. By 1877, the Great Upheaval saw more than 100,000 workers strike, shutting down nearly half the nation's rail systems. Over 100 people died. The dream of partnership between capital and labor, North and South, freedom and order, had fractured into violence. The pattern revealed itself. When Neptune's idealism in Aries refuses compromise, Venus in Libra's scales tip into chaos. The quest for perfect justice becomes the justification for imperfect war. 1698 to 1710. The illusion of inheritance. When diplomacy dissolved into succession wars. The War of the Spanish Succession erupted over who would inherit the Spanish throne. England and France attempted partition treaties to prevent bloodshed, but King Charles II of Spain refused to see his empire divided. Venus in Libra proposed negotiation, treaties, balance. Neptune in Aries whispered divine right, legitimate claim, righteous cause. The result? 13 years of war that drained treasuries and shattered alliances. The fighting wasn't truly about land. It was about whose dream of divine authority would prevail. Catholic and Protestant coalitions fought not for territory, but for the soul of Europe itself. Again, the pattern, Neptune in Aries, inflates belief into crusade. Venus in Libra strains to broker peace between incompatible gods. 1534 to 1546, when the Church became the state. The First Protestant Reformation. In 1534, Henry VIII's Act of Supremacy made him supreme head of the Church of England, severing centuries of papal authority. Venus in Libra asked, "Can there be partnership between marriage law and papal law? Between crown and cross?" Neptune in Aries declared, "No compromise with corruption, no alliance with false prophets." Between 1535 and 1537, 18 Carthusians were killed for refusing to deny papal authority, and Thomas More and John Fisher were executed for rejecting royal supremacy. The dissolution of monasteries that followed became the greatest redistribution of property since the Norman conquest, a complete reordering of power, wealth, and faith. Here, the opposition revealed its deepest tension. Venus in Libra rules material partnerships and earthly contracts. Neptune in Aries governs spiritual autonomy and the soul of direct relationship with the divine. The Reformation was not just political rebellion. It was the question of who mediates between God and humanity. The material versus the mystical, the contract versus the calling. Across Europe, the Reformation burned. Relationship between nations, between church and state, between individual conscious and institutional control, was dissolved and rewritten under this opposition. The lesson was written in blood. When spiritual autonomy, Neptune in Aries, refuses relational compromise, Venus in Libra, partnership collapses into declarations of independence. The core pattern across 3 cycles. Number 1, wars over belief, not territory. Each era's conflict centered on what kind of world we should be, not what land we could hold. Number 2, economic illusions collapse. Expansion, speculation, and institutional greed always followed and always failed. Number 3, partnership models dissolve, unions, treaties, and alliances fracture under the strain of idealism. Number 4, martyrdom for ideals. From reformers to soldiers, people died not for survival, but for meaning. Number 5, questions of authority. Who decides what's just? Who defines the truth? Who holds the right to rule or to rebel? This opposition doesn't ask if we choose principles over compromise. It forces the choice, then makes us live with it. 2025 to 2038. The dream dissolves again. Now the pattern returns, and the themes have always begun to crystallize. When Neptune re-entered Aries on March 30th, 2025, the world was already at ideological war. Venus in Libra pleads, "Can we find balance?" Neptune in Aries answers, "There is no compromise on truth." But whose truth? Which justice? That is the trap of this opposition. Both sides believe they defend the sacred, Both claim the moral high ground. Both are willing to sacrifice partnership for principle. From Ukraine to Gaza, conflicts rage not simply over land, but over sovereignty, destiny, and divine mandate. Refugee tides swell, democracies fracture under culture wars, institutions falter under the weight of moral absolutism. Neptune in Aries will oppose Venus through 2038, squaring Capricorn's institutions and Cancer's emotional bonds. The next 13 years will test every form of partnership, political, personal, and spiritual. The question isn't if the scales will tip, it's which way and at what cost. Through to October 21st, 2038, what the pattern suggests. If history is our teacher, this cycle will bring economic reckonings, illusions of endless growth and limitless wealth collapse under their own weight. Partnership redefinitions, marriages, alliances, and treaties transform or dissolve. Martyrdom and sacrifice, conviction will again demand blood or devotion. Authority challenges, institutions lose legitimacy, new power structures rise. The rise of sovereignty, from nations to individuals, new forms of self-determination emerge at the price of collective cohesion. By 2038, when the opposition reaches 29 degrees, the lesson will culminate, a reckoning between principle and peace before Neptune enters Taurus to ground what remains. Integration, what Venus and Neptune are teaching. This opposition is not punishment, it is initiation. Venus in Libra teaches justice requires relationship. Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of fairness. Neptune in Aries teaches some truths demand action. Spiritual integrity requires courage. Together they insist. Relationships without principles become transactions. Principles without relationships become tyranny. The Civil War proved union cannot survive compromise with evil, but Reconstruction proved vengeance cannot sustain peace. The War of Spanish Succession proved diplomacy cannot fabricate order, but endless war cannot preserve it. The Reformation proved conscience cannot bow to authority, but holy war cannot build heaven. Questions for the cycle ahead. What am I willing to sacrifice for what I believe is right? And is it truly necessary? Where am I demanding perfect justice at the expense of possible peace? What partnerships are being tested not to destroy them, but to purify them? Can I hold my truth without weaponizing it? Can I seek balance without betraying my values? Because across 5 centuries, the pattern reveals this truth. The opposition doesn't ask us to choose between Venus and Neptune. It asks us to integrate them, to be principled enough to know what's non-negotiable and wise enough to know what must bend, to be idealistic enough to fight for what's sacred, and mature enough to stop fighting our own reflection. This cycle has turned throughout history. Through ages, we can only glimpse in fragments. But in the 3 times we trace most clearly, 1534, 1698, 1861, the choice was made through war, disillusion, and hard-earned wisdom. Now the pattern returns. The scales are in your hands. The dream is in your heart. What will you make of them? The planets are teachers, not tyrants. This opposition is no curse. It is a call to integrate love with faith. I hope this message has been helpful to you. I hope you feel empowered by what we've shared here today, and I hope it supports you in the week ahead. Thank you for listening to the weekly transit. If you're curious to learn how these transits or any other transits may be affecting you, or if you're interested in learning more about your astrological code, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. This episode was produced by me, Scott Tajarian. Music written by Ben Leinbach from Listen Deep by Amber Herzog-Lyman. Wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.